Tad and I wrote a script for Naked. We had the idea to do Naked Gun 4. This was back in 2018, before Paramount even had, any plans to do it. And so we thought it should be rebooted, but not doing the same old crap with, in an LA cop station. We wanted to really do a true reboot with a younger actor in a international spy thriller, espionage thing, a la Mission Impossible and Bourne Identity and Bond, the actual genres that people care about. And so we took it to Paramount, and we were having meetings for a while. They liked the script, and then suddenly, they gave Seth MacFarlane came in. He's the guy who does Family Guy and Ted, and he took the franchise away from us. And in Hollywood, you can do that because the studio owns it.
I'm joined by, he's in that bit of the picture there, Mr. David Zucker. Hello, David Zucker. How are you?
Hello. How are you doing here?
And where are you? You're in a more glamorous location than me, I suspect.
Well, this is in my office.
Ah.
I have an office where I pretend to go to work.
Now, your office, I mean, I'm jumping pretty much around my questions already here. I've been reading one of your books. I like the mug. Can we just have another look at that mug?
Sure. Okay.
That's very much on brand.
I thought this was appropriate.
It's incredibly appropriate.
Yeah, I love this mug. That's what I use. Yeah, I like to, reminds me of one of the movies I made. I can't remember which, but
we'll come to it, I'm sure.
We'll come to it.
I've been reading your book over the last couple of days, Before the Invention of Smiling.
Oh, that one. I thought you were talking about Surely You Can't Be Serious. But
well, I figure everyone asks you about Surely You Can't Be Serious, so I went and read the other one. And the other ones, it's interesting you say you're in your office, because there are lots of pictures in this book of historical things important to you around your home that you've preserved and you've kept the stories of going.
I kind of determined a long time ago that anything that was in a picture has a special value.
Oh, that's interesting.
I have like pictures of my family when I was 7 and and on the mantelpiece are 2 brass candlesticks, and and I have those, I have those candlesticks with.
It's about 2/3 the way through the book, that isn't it? Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So I just, this is the thing that I should probably get the book to some, genealogical society or club or something, and I think it's kind of inspiring to track down your family history, and I did as much as I could, because I sat down with my grandmother in the 70s, and she was the only one of 8 brothers and sisters who immigrated to through Ellis Island and came to Milwaukee in 1909. She's the only one who talked about it, because that generation was, we're Americans now. We don't want to talk about the old country. But my grandmother did, and I was the only one of her 10 grandkids who listened.
There's some really haunting lines in the story that you tell in there as well. And I'll come to your movie shortly, but I was really taken with this book. That I think it's fairly early in the book. Someone says, "Lady, you got 5 other children. What does it matter if you lose this one?" And that was like your grandmother. And then it strikes me like 15 pages later, there's a huge family picture of you all, in 2016. And if that man had had his way 16 pages earlier, that entire picture pretty much wouldn't exist. I just found it staggering.
Yeah, I'm glad that you picked up on that. I mean, these are things that occurred to me, and that all these stories, if I didn't write them down, would be lost. I mean, and there's a million stories, I'm sure, that are lost.
Yeah.
But these stories I thought had value, so I put it in a book.
Well, I just also for those interested, the book is called Before the Invention of Smiling. There's a bit in it where you go to, is it Lodomir Cemetery? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, and Lodomir, I guess. It's in. My grandmother lived in a little village in what is now Slovakia.
Yeah.
And it was just south of the Carpathian Mountains.
Yeah.
and Poland was on the border, and I went back to, and she had talked about this little village called Hinkovitz,
Yeah.
and I managed to find it, from her description, and I even found where her house was.
Yeah.
There weren't any addresses, but I found where the house was, and everything had been destroyed in a big World War II battle
Yeah.
uh, between the Germans and the Russians, and it was called the Battle of Dukla Pass,
Yeah.
and so supposedly everything was destroyed, but I found where her house was, and there were houses there and a barn built on the original foundations, I'm sure. So I got to, do at least see that.
Can I just ask then, as a human being, once you've, because this journey's what really tracked over decades, from the first tellings of the stories to drawing a map based on what she was describing to you.
Yeah.
What's the bit as a human being when you're stood there, and I don't know, even appreciation that everything she said is absolutely on the money.
Well, I had kind of dreamed of that day
Yeah.
beforehand, actually going to this place. And I have a great interest in when I read history books, I want to know what's there now.
Yeah.
And my friend Paul Hutton just wrote a book called The Undiscovered Country. It's all about, the American West. And I find as I read it, I want to know, well, where is that place now where Kit
Yeah.
Carson killed some this or that person or whatever. I want to go to those places. And from my earliest memories, I was affected by the Walt Disney miniseries of Davy Crockett.
Which pops up
And
right at the start of the book as
right.
well.
And so
Yeah.
it kind of piqued my interest in history. And I knew at the time I wanted to know, where is the Alamo? What's there now?
Yeah.
So and I had this, lifelong fixation with Davy Crockett, and I became a collector. And I collected like four of his actual letters. One of which was the most important letter he ever wrote, where he says, "Tomorrow I leave for Texas." So, and I have that, and I just donated it to the Alamo, which,
Yeah.
the Alamo used to be, they just had a gift shop, but now they're having this huge historical museum. They're renovating everything around it. They built museums. And so I'll be going to the Alamo in October, and they're going to do something, to honor me and my collection. I'll go anywhere where I'll be the center of attention.
Oh, there's free food as well.
Yeah, right. At free food. Yeah.
Understood. Understood. I mean, it's remarkable, and the bit about Lodomir Cemetery you said just before about all these untold stories.
Oh, right.
It's really, it's
I
really, yeah.
don't
Sorry,
think,
I went
I
off on a
got
tangent.
off track.
Yeah, but
But I went to the cemetery where uh, she said, my grandmother had to convince her mother to leave. And,
yeah,
she's luckily, she managed to convince her. But one of the things my great grandmother said was that, she has to go visit the graves of the ancestors and say whatever prayers there were.
yeah.
And somehow, my grandmother convinced her, she doesn't need to do that. And in those days, the when you got married, the Jewish bride had to shave her head. This is like
Yeah, yeah.
craziness, but it's the Orthodox. And my grandmother promised that yes, she would shave her head, all that stuff. And I think at when she does get married, there's a thing in the book where my grandmother says, "All right, Mom, I guess I have to shave my head now, right?"
Yes,
And
yes.
and great grandma said, "Hey, I get it. It's America. You don't have to do it." And so that started the change from how my grandmother's family lived for literally thousands of years.
Yeah.
And they come to America and, they ditch the whole Orthodox thing. They become Reform Jews, and,
And
Reform Judaism
and
is all
ironic,
about,
and if I've
all
got
that
this,
stuff. Reform Jews say, well, we don't have to,
and
So,
if I've got it right as well, all hinged on a rabbi telling her to lie.
yes, the rabbi said,
Incredible. Yeah.
yeah. And I even went to that little town where the rabbi
Yeah.
was. And who knows if there's any of the original, but the buildings or anything, but because there's so many wars and craziness happening there, and one of the great reasons why they got out of,
Yeah.
Slovakia. So, and I saw, and she described a lake, a beautiful
Yeah.
lake there. I went there, had my picture taken in front of a lake, and it was what an experience.
Oh, it's an extraordinary book. I just wonder, before I just move off it, I mean, what kind of response have you had to it? I mean,
Well, basic, pretty much not much because I just self-published it.
yeah,
It's on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon.
it's on
But
Amazon in the UK as well, not
yeah,
just in the
I
US.
have
Yeah.
to turn my attention to really getting getting something going for it because you just all this stuff is about getting a publisher or marketing the book. It's all marketing. So
Yeah. But
so I'm
conversely, if you
kind of
if
waiting to do that, and I'm going to do that.
conversely, if you hadn't have self-published that, I wouldn't have known your grandmother's story. So,
Right. Well, nobody, and
no,
I'm glad to hear that it was of some interest to you,
yeah, yeah.
who,
I had no, I mean, I looked at it, it's just like, it's a book from the comedy guy. I think that's how most people look at it.
okay, right,
Do you know
yeah.
what I mean, though? It's just like
And there
your
are
name
some,
comes with a preconception to it. It's just like, oh,
and
okay.
I hope I don't disappoint because
Oh,
there are
the
fun,
captions are
the
golden.
captions are
You
funny
had a
to the
lot of fun
picture.
writing the picture captions. I did note that
Yeah.
down. I'm going to swing it slightly towards your movies because you did give me a segue in the book as well. In that there is a picture in the book of from the set of Top Secret of Val Kilmer next to Cher, and
Right.
you recount a story there of how Cher told you it was a stupid movie and it'd flop at the box office.
Yeah. I was so annoyed with Cher.
Right?
And then I say in the book, never mind, she was right.
Yeah.
She shouldn't have said that, but, that was just one of these crazy experiences. And then in the picture, she was there when we were shooting the prison sequence.
Yeah.
And Val was put in jail in the East German jail. And his prison number was 4395, which was the number of our house on Wildwood
So
in Milwaukee.
I mean, I did show Top Secret to one of my children underage and completely forgot about the anal intruder joke as
Yeah,
well.
but I think most of that, they don't get it. If they're that young,
They did by
they
the
don't
time I got the
understand it.
diagrams out and explained it to
But if
them.
they're
Yeah,
old
yeah.
enough to understand it, it's not going to kill them. Yeah.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. But
Yeah,
Top Secret,
I showed Airplane to my son when he was 2.
yeah, I watched it when I
And
was 7. That's like,
oh yeah, but he loved it, and all he could talk about were the boobies. Anyways, yeah.
but I mean, geographically, that's as close as you and I have been. Top Secret, I think. Have
Oh
I got
yeah.
this right? So
Yeah, I
I'm
lived
in the
in
West Midlands in the UK,
and I lived in South Kensington in Onslow Gardens.
that sounds posh. That does.
It was
That's,
pretty. I had a great flat and it was literally a garden in the back, and we would have drinks parties, and it was a wonderful year. Yeah.
so every now and then I interview for various things Jim Carter, who is
Oh
now
yeah.
of course, the butler of Downton Abbey. The
Yes.
butler of Downton Abbey, and he told me that every other junket someone asks him about Deja Vu.
Deja vu.
So I mean this film. It's an interesting place to start because it's a film that I've read in lots of interviews that you had some disappointment with, and the three of you, Jerry Zucker and Jim Abrahams and yourself, were just a bit beaten by the box office failure and how it's one of my favourite films of all time.
Right, and
that's my starting point.
It's probably our funniest movie, but we were disappointed in the box office. And one thing I've learned is number one, don't blame anybody else for your
Yeah.
disappointment. And because conversely, I've never learned anything from any of the hits. I didn't learn
Oh,
nothing
that's
from
interesting.
Airplane. Yeah, didn't learn anything from Scary Movie 3 or
Yeah.
from Ruthless People. But I was obsessed with trying to figure out why Top Secret didn't perform at the box office, despite how funny it was and how
Yeah.
much people love that movie. So, we learned after a while that it was as important as jokes are in a comedy, having that character development, for some reason, that's what people care about. And you have to have a character with an intrinsic emotional problem in the first act that he has to solve. It's absolutely essential.
Yeah.
And then during the movie, the character solves that problem, and in the third act, you resolve it. And so my brother used to say, uh, his summary of it was, in the first act you get your hero up a tree, in the second act you throw stones at him, and in the third act you get him down.
Yeah, I read a book by Ian Lafreniere and Dick Clement, and they
Yeah.
talked about their if in doubt, invent some people, get them into trouble, get them out of trouble.
Ye- But not only a heart, but not only a physical problem. You must do a emotional, mental,
Yeah.
intrinsic problem. That's what it needs. You can't just because we got Val into trouble,
Yes.
and Jim Abrams and I used to talk about that. It would have been so easy to have him, some kind of problem,
I
that
have
he
an
was.
irrational love of the line, "Is this the potato farm? No, I am Albert Potato." Which no one cites as their funniest line ever. But
Oh,
me and
everybody has a different
me and my
funny
sister,
line.
it was the one that used to just kill us as kids and still
Oh,
does.
that's
I
great.
rang her before today and just said, I'm going to say, and she just like, the potato farm.
The
But
potato.
the reason I asked the question is because you've talked quite a lot about what didn't work about the film over the years. I'm just curious, now you're at a point of perspective, what, 40 odd years on from it. Do you appreciate it more? Because I've seen you do an interview, for instance, where you said you went back to An American Carol, or big fat important movie, as it turned out in the UK, and said you rewatched that for the first time in what, 10, 15 years and liked it. And I'm just wondering, do you go back to Top Secret and see different things in it now? Given that
No,
that's the one that,
I don't go back to Top Secret and see anything different. I thought the same at the time
interesting.
as I do now. However, An American Carol, and by the way, that's a terrible title that they're doing. And oh gosh.
Also, the DVD didn't work, so I've only watched half of it, and they spelt Leslie Nielsen's name incorrectly on
Oh,
the DVD box. I don't
horrible.
know if you can see that.
Big
There you
fat
go.
important. Yeah.
You're now big fat
Anyways,
important movie.
I wrote it. That movie is good. I mean, that movie is I think it's wonderful, but probably not a great idea to do as a movie but I guess I'm fearless. I'll do anything that I'm
Yeah,
kind of interested in. So I have one of my best friends is a comedy writer, lives in New York, and we see each other whenever I go to New York, whenever he comes here, and we wanted to write a movie together.
yeah.
We just and I wanted to do a movie about politics, and so Lewis and I said, "Yeah,
So
let's
this
do
is
it."
this is Lewis Friedman, just to be clear. Yeah,
Lewis
yeah,
Friedman. Lewis is to the left of Castro,
yeah,
and I think of myself as center right.
yeah,
And but we're an example of, look, you can get along with people. I
yeah.
still love Lewis. I still love my family. We just have differences politically. So Lewis and I wrote this movie, and we had so much fun doing it. And I got to work with John Voight, Kelsey Grammer, David Allen Greer, Dennis Hopper, all these great stars, James Woods.
Yeah.
So it was great. And but I think if you do a movie that touches that third rail, it's just people just people on the right loved it and people on the left hated it. So and then the thing is, it kind of poked fun, and Lewis wanted to poke fun at
Yeah,
Democrats.
yeah.
And so Democrats don't especially have a sense of humor about this stuff, and Republicans in the US don't go to movies. So, we were screwed, right from the start.
I can't remember. I was trying to think about, because I've read you say something along those lines before. I can't remember the last box office hit about politics. I was
No, it's
certainly not a dramatic one. I know there's been done. I
it's
can't.
tough. And
Yeah.
and I have a rule, I'm doing this comedy course called
Yes.
mastercrash.com. And one of our rules is axe grinding. It's like you're not supposed to
Yeah.
try to make political points. And I think Lewis and I thought we could get away with it by making everything funny. And I think the movie works
Yeah.
if you I think it
I'd
works.
tell you if the second half of the DVD worked, I'd be able to give you like a better
What
breakdown.
it just stopped?
I bought it specially, and yeah, it just stopped.
Oh, well,
So
you should get
I
your
will
money
I will
back.
get my £3.99
Or
back. Don't worry.
yeah, or I'll send you money. Something. Yeah.
You'll send me money.
Yeah.
Lewis Friedman is a name I wanted to talk to you about because I first saw him mentioned in association with you, and tell me if this is right, as he was an executive at Paramount
No,
is that right? So
no, it must be a different guy.
okay. So where does Lewis Friedman come in? You said that
Well, we wrote basketball
yes,
together,
you did, yeah, yeah.
and so
And you've
doing a
got
movie with Lewis every night in the trailer, we'd go over the next day's material, and we were always appalled at how bad it was. So we would drink bourbon and and rewrite it after shooting was done. So and it was just so much fun. And basketball has also didn't really perform at the box office, but now it's like this cult classic,
I don't think it even got a cinema release in the UK.
Oh,
I had to import the DVD to be able
that
to
could
watch
be.
basic. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just one of the things I'm still sort of a little bit back in your Genesis story and your early years. I'm going all over here, but I do want to just put another name to you. There was a teacher. I always want to big up the teachers who made like a difference to people's lives. But you just briefly mention in your book a is it Miss Scapuzza, who was a teacher
Miss Spacuzza
who sent you to the principal of your school
sent me
over
to
a
the principal's office.
and then you worked out she loved your comic book.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the teacher, Miss Spacuzza, thought these comics were, very unusual
So you were 10 at the
and
10 or 11 at the
unique.
time. Yeah.
I was probably 10 or 11, exactly. And so she thought it was so unusual for someone to do this. And so she didn't say, she went with me to the principal's office to show him these comic books, which I would distribute to all the kids and they would all read it. And he liked it. It was a good, encouraging experience. And I think of a lot of my teachers and some of them were really good.
Yeah.
And one of my regrets in life is not having gone back, maybe in the 80s and, called or visited some of them. And I
Yeah.
could have. They were still alive then.
Regrets are easy though, aren't they? I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. We've all got a list of those. Can I throw in a name of another collaborator who you occasionally touch on as being like fairly central to a lot of your work, but I don't hear
Right.
many stories about him? Pat Proft.
Oh,
I
yeah.
hear
Pat
stories
Proft.
about, and I do want to ask about Jim in a minute. I hear stories of you and Jerry growing up together. But where did Pat Proft come in? Because he's almost feels
Well,
like the extra wheel. Yeah.
we started the theater. There were four of us. There was Jerry, me, Jim, and a fellow named Dick Chudnow. And Dick Chudnow was one of the two stars of the show, really, Dick and Steve Stucker.
Yeah.
But Dick quit after a year, and because he got
Dick.
married, and his
Oh,
wife
Dick.
wanted to be in the show, and this is recounted in the book. And we tried to convince him, don't do this, Dick, don't leave the show. But he left, and Dick talks about it in the book. Anyway, so we we had to work in someone, 1 week. And so Jerry and Jim and I went to the Comedy Store, and Pat Proft was one of our favorite stand-up comics
Is that
there
what
at
you
the time.
found him?
Yeah, so that we found him. I think we had met him before
Yeah.
because we had gone to see him, and I don't, well, we met a lot of these guys. We met Jay Leno and David Letterman and Robin Williams, a lot of these guys who were comics at the time. And and Pat said, okay, he said, okay, I can do the show for a couple of weeks, and because we just needed somebody in an emergency. And so he was there for 2 weeks, and he ended up staying for 40 years or 50 years, with a writing and lifelong friend. And Pat wrote the Police Squad. He was the head writer of the Police Squad television series,
Yep.
and then he wrote the first Naked Gun with Jerry and Jim and me, and then the next two Naked Guns I just wrote with Pat,
Yeah.
and then after that we wrote the scary movies together that we did. We wrote Scary Movie 3, 4, and 5.
So if you and Lewis Friedman is going off and getting the bourbon out at the end of a day and looking at the script, what's the working mechanic with you and Pat then? Is it a
Completely
different?
different.
Yeah.
For a while, Pat lived in Los Angeles, and then we would write together in a room. But then he moved to Minnesota, where
Yeah.
he was from originally, and there was a time between being in person with Pat and my being able to work a computer where where we couldn't really collaborate. So there was a 4 or 5 year gap before we worked together again on Scary Movie 3, I think. Yeah.
I love the before I could use a computer. I still
Yeah.
think one of the tensest scenes in modern cinema is there's a bit in Clear and Present Danger, the Harrison Ford movie, where the printer
Yeah.
doesn't work. And it's one of the
Oh,
most relatable pieces of like big Hollywood blockbuster filmmaking, just trying to get one sodding piece of technology to print a piece of paper. That's
and
that's tension.
Pat and I wrote um, a, a script for Naked. We had the idea to do Naked Gun 4. This was
Yeah.
back in 2018 before Paramount even had, any
Yeah.
plans to do it. And so we thought it should be rebooted, but not doing the same old crap with,
Yeah.
in an LA cop station. We wanted to really do a true reboot with a younger actor in a international spy thriller
Yeah.
espionage thing, a la Mission Impossible
Yeah.
and Bourne Identity and Bond, the actual genres that people care about. And so we took it to Paramount, and we were having meetings for a while. They liked the script, and then suddenly, they gave Seth MacFarlane came in. He's the guy who
Yeah.
does Family Guy
Yeah.
and Ted, and he took the franchise away from us. And in Hollywood, you can do that because the studio owns it, and so that's what happened. So they then, and I tried to get a meeting with Seth MacFarlane to kind of tell him, well, you should be doing this, or I mean, if
Yeah.
he wasn't going to do my script, maybe I could help him, guide him, but he didn't. He wouldn't meet with me, so that was the end of it.
Yeah, I think you've been fairly open as well about how you feel Paramount have treated you and about that whole
Oh,
story.
it's
Yeah,
terrible,
it
and
doesn't
that's
sound
how I
like a
say.
lot. It
That's what I
doesn't
say.
sound.
I just say that's Hollywood. They're just a
Yeah,
bunch of Hollywood. Big producer, big studio, big agency, big star, and they got Liam Neeson. So,
yeah. I saw the
anyways,
film.
this
I saw.
and they
Yeah.
spent a lot of money on it, and I could have done it for half the budget.
So how does that experience contrast to say not doing Airplane 2? Was it a case of Airplane 2 was by choice and this wasn't?
Oh yeah, well we didn't want to do. We never want to do the same thing.
Yes, you've said. Yeah.
I always want to do something new. So at first, and this goes back to 1981 when Paramount wanted to do Airplane 2, and we couldn't convince them not to do it.
Yeah.
But these guys, Eisner and Katzenberg and Barry Diller,
Yes.
were very, in contrast to the today's Paramount idiots. They were very smart guys, and they convinced us we could do it, and we did come up with an idea. Again, doing the same sense of humor, but we would have Stryker and Elaine fly the plane down at the end of Airplane 1,
Yeah.
and he takes her home to meet his family so they can get married, and it's The Godfather. And that would have been a great idea because we wouldn't have to do it. Would have been Airplane 2, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't have been on an airplane. So
Well,
just like
there is a
Naked Gun 4 would have been Naked Gun, but not in an LA cop station.
There is a card at the end of Airplane 2, isn't there? Coming soon, Airplane 3. They did a tap. I think that's
Oh,
still on there. So
I've never seen it. I've never seen it.
It's still the very last frame of that. It's just like there was clearly a plan for a third one somewhere. You mentioned
Well,
Barry Diller there, and Barry Diller talk. I've just read his book, and he talks in there of Airplane, and he
right.
says that it was one of those rare instances. I'm quoting him here, when the dailies proved prophetic. He said, no one deserved to had as good a time as we did watching those dailies. Howls were heard from the projection room every day for the month it was shooting. So a lot of the cliche I hear from shooting comedy is when you're directing it, it's not as funny because it's really, really hard work. And I'm just kind of curious how the process of directing comedy has evolved, because you're doing the MasterCrash course now as well, but
Right.
there's a degree of it, presumably, that is a job of work.
Well,
And
yeah, most of Master Crash is the 15 rules, as
yeah,
I said, and most of these rules are what not to do. You can't
yeah,
really teach anybody to be funny, but you can avoid a lot of mistakes in doing this kind of spoof. And we make it clear that this doesn't apply to the Wayans, doesn't apply to Mike Myers. It's just these are only our rules. We're not saying that all comedy must follow our rules, but when I get onto the set, I mean, number one, I've never been frightened on a set because I knew I had this pages. The pages were great.
yeah,
And, whether they had been written 6 months before or the night before with Lewis,
yeah.
I was always very confident of the material. And then and then you've already done a lot of the work in directing, which is casting, as well as the writing. And so you get a scene on its feet and you rehearse it. And then I have to be able to laugh. And if it's not funny, I have to go down my checklist. You try A, you try B, and usually
Oh,
it's
interesting.
maybe the setup is too long. You cut out sentences, and then if that doesn't work, you cut out words. Even when I look at a page in a script, no speech can be longer than 6 lines.
Yeah.
So I actually see a script as visual, and it's not one of the 15 rules, but I'm going to do another course we have a glossary of terms, and there's so much else that goes into in directing comedy. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I admire Francis Coppola and whoever directed Top Gun Maverick. They're
Oh,
geniuses.
Joseph
They're
Kosinski.
so
Yeah.
good. And I love Tom Cruise movies. I love Mission Impossible. I like those movies. And when we did Airplane, we loved those airplane disaster movies. I mean, they were popcorn, but
Yeah.
we still, yeah. But that's what I do on the set, and then I watch a monitor. I never watch the actors, just the actors, because I watch what the movie audience is going to see eventually, and I have to laugh. I have to laugh at the take. If I don't laugh, then there's something wrong. If this isn't funny, I get frustrated. I was doing a scene with Jeremy Piven in Scary Movie 3,
Yeah.
and I was very frustrated, and I just lose track of where I am, who I'm with, and I'm getting frustrated in front of the actor. And I
Yeah.
said, "We're mired in the muck. This is terrible." And the actor,
Yeah.
actors think, "Oh, shoot, this is my fault or something." So I had to like talk him off the ledge. And then, but it turned out there was nothing I could do, and we cut the scene,
Oh,
or we
interesting.
we, we cut the gag. I was right on set. It wasn't working, but it has to work on set. And I do one of the skills that I try to maintain is try to imagine that I haven't lived with this material for 6 months to a
Yeah.
year, haven't rehearsed it a million times, and I'm seeing it for the first time as the audience is seeing it. So
And
that's what I have to do as a director.
is the truth too on some of your films you're doing 10, 15, 20 takes just to try and get just to
Although
try and
I don't do that much. If I do 8 takes, it's probably too much, and there's something wrong, or it's my fault. When Leslie did, I just remember this one
yeah,
scene that we did. Leslie says to Robert Goulet, "Isn't that right, Mr. Poopy Pants?"
that's the,
And for some reason, I didn't think that it was coming off however he was reading it. So I think I probably did a dozen takes, and I could have used the second take. It was like it was totally my fault, but these are things. But that rarely happens. I usually try to get it in 2 or 3 takes.
There, I don't know if you heard it. There was an interview last year. I think it was Peter Siegel talked about doing the third Naked Gun, and he was
Right.
fairly open about how he struggled to direct it. How he
Yeah.
certainly struggled in the first week or two just to try and get the tone, the tempo, the pace of it a little
Right.
bit.
Because yeah, he didn't get trained in this whole thing. But I was there the whole time, and often we were watching in a monitor in my trailer where we
Yeah,
were writing another movie, and I would talk to him on the set, and it's frustrating. It's like, and then and he never did one of these again. He was like he never tried to do a spoof again. It's much harder than people think. And on Scary Movie 5, we had Malcolm Lee, excellent director,
yeah,
but in spoof he was out of his element, and he was very uncomfortable during most of it, and the thing flopped horribly, and probably helped to ruin spoof,
yeah,
so for years after that. But Malcolm then went to did another couple of movies that were big hits
yeah.
after that. So, and he's great at directing those. But and then Pete went on to direct some Adam Sandler movies
Yeah,
and
he did
had
Get
a
Smart as
big
well. Yeah.
success.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was interesting just hearing him because it's the opposite of how the three of you used to talk, struggling for and he wasn't being rude about him or anything like that, but he struggled to know how to direct Leslie Nielsen.
Right.
He
Yeah.
struggled to find out how to get the performance and the pace that he needed out of it. And I'm just
Yeah.
curious, like that, what the contrast was with you, like the first day of Airplane when you've got
I'm not sure. Now you're bringing back some memories. I guess he was struggling to direct Leslie, and
yeah,
Jerry and Jim and I didn't really. I just knew how to do it, I
yeah,
think. And the other thing is that, we for the Anna Nicole Smith part,
yeah,
we had her in. We thought she would be great, a great actress, personality, body to be in that part. Excuse me. And so we had her in, and she read it, and she was terrible. And then Pete worked with her for 20 minutes, and she was still terrible, and he just was shaking his head and said, "She can't do it. This is terribly destroyed." And I said, "Wait a minute, let me have her for 20 minutes."
yeah.
And so I did, and I worked with her, and of course she could do it. So there's a certain way of directing this kind of spoof acting
Yeah.
that comes natural to Jerry and Jim and me, but not necessarily for Malcolm Lee or Pete Siegel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Or,
I,
or
I,
the director of Naked Gun 4, who's
Akiva
just
Schaffer, he speaks
Akiva
very,
Schaffer, great guy, came to my house a couple times. We talked, and I actually I wish them well. I did an interview in Hollywood Reporter,
yeah, I
and
saw
I
it.
was hoping that the movie would do well, because then maybe it would encourage studios to do comedies,
Yeah.
and maybe spoof in particular. But no, it had no chance of doing well.
I interviewed Akiva Schaffer. He spoke very highly of you and was
Yeah,
very
he's great.
complimentary of
And
the time that you spent together.
yeah,
Because like
but
all we read in the press sometimes is like all the really pissy stuff, isn't it? And like
yeah, and
you both met and had a cordial that's not a headline,
we
is it?
we
But that's
did. and
actually yeah.
and then and then the second time he came over, uh he had sent me the script, and I read the script, and there were a couple of things that I thought were good, and I told him, but I said, the whole script, I can't. They wanted me to sign on as executive producer,
Yeah.
and I said, I can't put my name on something I didn't work on. I won't do anything
Yeah.
just for the money. I'm very happy here. I have my house. I have, excuse me, I have 2 kids and an ex-wife who love me. and I don't need a lot more money. I really want to do Star of Malta, and I want to do counterintelligence. That's what I want to do. And I have enough. I don't want to curse too much, but
I help yourself.
they
Help
call it
yourself.
"fuck you" money. You've heard that? You must have heard that.
I have heard that phrase. Of course, I've
And
heard
it's
that phrase.
important. I've limited myself to one house, and I can afford to fly business class. It's all I want. My one fear is dying with enough money left over that I could have flown first class the whole time. So that's how I roll. And so then Seth MacFarlane called me, and he called me off 4 hours later because I told Akiva I can't come on
Yeah.
as executive producer. And they were offering me money, and and so Seth MacFarlane was very nice,
Yeah.
and he spent 10 minutes just telling me how much he idolized Naked Gun, Airplane, Top Secret, Basketball, just all this
Yeah.
stuff. And how could I be mad at somebody who tells me how much of a genius I am? So, but these are nice guys who mean well, and they love the Naked Gun. But it's like all I can think of is that Seth MacFarlane is like one of these crazed psychotic serial killers who goes to the victim, "I love you, so I must kill you." So and that's what it was. And they killed the franchise. So
So
it's unbelievable.
So you've mentioned I should mention you've done there's a big piece gone up over at the stunt list, which includes I think 25 pages of your scripts
Right.
for counterintelligence, and you mentioned in there Star of Malta as well. As you brought them both up, those are still films you're trying to get off the ground. Is
Still
that
trying to
right?
get off the ground. So what we have, Star of Malta is a 12 to $15 million budget, which
Yeah,
is 10 cents in Hollywood. But we can do a great movie for that. I know how to do it.
yeah.
And it's 7 weeks of shooting. And we have half the money raised, and CAA and AIG, two big agencies, are helping me because they love the script. And we're casting it now. So we're going out to actors.
Okay,
Once we get the lead actor, we'll get the rest of the budget, and we can set a start date.
okay. I
So
will.
that's where that is. And then I figure after, people will be surprised at how great Star of Malta will be. And they'll say, "Oh, this guy isn't dead or isn't
This guy.
in a wheelchair drooling. Maybe he can still direct
That
because
should be that should just be the tagline on the poster. This guy
yeah,
isn't dead.
he's actually alive." Yeah.
He's alive.
Paramount, they had me to direct, they had my script, and they still threw it away for, Seth MacFarlane. We bow down to Seth MacFarlane.
Okay. So that at the moment is out to actors. And you're trying to get the rest of the money based off a name,
Yeah, well,
presumably.
we
Yeah.
will. We're
And then
going to raise the rest of the money, whether it's for a big actor or we're going to relatively A-list actors now. And if we can't get them, we'll get the next level.
okay, I'll follow that story with interest. I reported it when it was first announced.
Yeah.
Can I just touch on Jim Abrahams?
Yeah.
That I've been watching interviews that you, Jerry, and Jim did, I think last year for the launch of the Airplane book, which I've got but couldn't find in time. I don't know where I filed it, but I've got it up on that shelf somewhere.
Uh-huh.
And the joy of seeing the three of you on stools together, I mean, trading barbs in the same way you must have been doing for like 60, 70 years. Can you capture that book tour for me a little bit and how special that is? And perhaps just for those unfamiliar with Jim Abrahams, just tell us a story of him.
Well, Jim, Jim was always 100%. He was 100% in favor of doing this book.
Yeah.
And Jerry was always lukewarm on it. Jerry always said, "Why would anybody want to read this?" And so Jim and I worked on it for a long time. And and we and after we had Jim and I had the basic book ready,
Yeah.
I convinced Jerry to put his name on as uh, with an introduction. It was going to be by Jim Abrams and David Zucker, but with an introduction by or forward by Jerry Zucker.
Yeah.
So we gave it to Jerry, and he couldn't think of anything to say because he wasn't in favor of this book anyways. And so he gave it to these guys that he really respected, these two writers who he had written some material with, and he had the utmost of respect for these guys. So they read, they said, "Okay, we'll read it and we'll help you out with this." And they called him back, and this is Jerry telling me this.
Yeah.
Uh, and they called him back and they said, "Jerry, what are you, an idiot? This book is great. We love this book, and you should be an author of it." So Jerry came to me and he said, "Can I come back in?" So there
Did you
and
say no? That would have been like the perfect no.
nah, we're beyond even those kind of gags with each other. But he said, it took a lot for him to say that. Anyways, so and what happened was, so Jerry comes back in, and then Jim and Jerry and I worked for a month on revising everything. And the book became tremendously better
Yeah.
for having Jerry there. We were always a triumvirate, it was always the three of us. And working on it with Jerry, and Jerry did editing. He added a bunch. He wanted other stuff out, and we said, okay, because we had this concept with the three of us, which we called ultimate wisdom. And we trusted the three of us. And if two guys said something was good, even if the third guy didn't agree, the third guy went along with it. And we said, well, it's ultimate wisdom. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a little pretentious, but that's why we have our 15 rules. But the 15th rule is there are no rules.
I was going
So
to ask that. Is there just like the 15th rule is like the Jurassic Park one, the raptors against the fences, just press everything out. It's just like,
yeah, it just you have to be flexible. Like there's kind of a rule, don't break the fourth wall, but we do break the
I was
fourth
going to
wall.
say,
Like if you need it, you can do it. I thought I could use the 15th rule when I did American Carol,
yeah.
the axe grinding, but I don't know. It's someday that movie will have a revival, I think.
One film I went back to this year, which I'd not seen for a long time, was the second Naked Gun, and I'd forgotten how bold it was in just having an environmental subplot
Right.
to
Yeah,
it.
that was it. I had joined Tree People,
Well, I
and I
found a
was in
quote
an
from you. I found a quote from you in
oh
a book
great.
of
Okay, what
interviews
did
that
I
you did.
say?
Well, you said, "How would you like to be remembered?" And you said, "As a good environmentalist."
Oh no, I said that?
You said that in 90. There you go. There is your quote in
Oh my God.
1991. As a
No,
good
that
environmentalist, it's a hard question to answer. I suppose if I'd made a lot of movies that made people laugh, that would be good. You said I've received letters from families who had sick relatives in the hospital or something awful like that, and they sat and watched Police Squad or one of the Naked Guns or Airplane, and they all got a good laugh. That has a kind of lasting meaning. So you didn't just
yeah,
say
well, I think
environmentalist, but
that's
yeah,
that's closer to it. Planting trees is and I'm not into generally, I'm not a global warming guy. I'm not the
yeah,
sky is falling, all that stuff, but I do love planting trees. And on my block, I've, I've gone up and down the block, sometimes with my daughter, knocking on doors and trying to convince people on my street
yeah.
to plant trees. And I'm making a dent in it. We've got half of it planted, but there are some old people who say, "Oh, what the hell is wrong with old people? They just don't want to do anything." And there was this one corner house only three houses up from me, and I would go there every 2 years, and I would give them the literature and everything, and they would just nod, and then And they never did anything. Finally, I had my gardener just go and plant a tree in their front yard. And they were usually never home, but they were home. They were home while he was planting, and they rushed down and said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "Well, your neighbor, two houses down on the other side of the street, David Zucker, is giving you this tree." And they said, "Oh, okay." And so it's still there. It's about 2 years old now. I water it during the summer,
I love
and
that. I love that.
it's important. And I'm trying. So and there's other people further down the block who are just old and they won't plant trees. I'm just waiting and hoping that they'll die soon, so I can go in and plant a tree in their front yard. So
I
that's
have I have an ex-boss who made quite a lot of money, and he left his fortune to planting trees because he
well,
just
that's
wanted
good.
he wanted to put, his description was he wanted to put a lung in the middle of England. I always loved
Oh,
that. I thought that was really
oh,
lovely, and he planted hundreds of thousands of trees, tons of them.
that's great. And I
Isn't it?
thought, you know, there's sections of London, and I can't remember what they're called, but they have all these flats,
Mm.
they're just
Yeah, yeah,
rows and rows of flats, but no trees. And I
yeah.
thought, why wouldn't King Charles get behind? They could do it. They could plant trees there.
The
Anyways,
royal family has a lot less power than it looks. You found that out in
maybe
the first Naked Gun, didn't you? It's
that's
like
right.
the Queen doesn't even not get to pass the hot dog along. Surely that's
Right. Yeah. But I heard that they did see it though.
Oh, tell me,
I just, I
how
know
did you
that,
hear that?
well, I know that Prince Philip saw Airplane. That I had on good authority. He liked Airplane. And then I did hear that the royal family did watch Naked Gun and they got a kick out of it because I mean it was funny and
Yeah, yeah. It's just like it's surreal,
it
though,
was
right?
we weren't mean to them or anything. It was just but that's so someday I want to meet King Charles and maybe follow up on that and ask him. But you asked me about what I like to be remembered for. Well, what's important to me is more that answer I gave where, people are with the stories I've heard are that families are in a hospital room together
Yeah.
and with a sick or dying relative and they watch Airplane or talk about Airplane.
Can I ask? Because you're asked a lot about writing, you're asked a lot about directing. I'm curious what your cutting room looks like, what it's like when you get into the edit with one of your films. And the reason I've talked to a couple of comedy directors. I've talked to Chris Columbus about Mrs. Doubtfire. I've talked to Adam McKay about Step Brother, and both of them shot more footage than Coppola did for Apocalypse Now for those
Oh, I don't
comedies.
shoot that much footage.
Just in terms of when you get it into the edit, because you've already talked about just like this, that checklist you've got on set.
Right. And
Um,
then when we're shooting, when I think I've got a good take, I tell the script supervisor,
yeah,
uh, take three's good, take five, and then I even get into take take such and such is good for this, you know, this line or
yeah,
that gag. So the editor has those notes. And the other thing about editors, there are A-list guys and B-list guys. And with an A-list guy, they'll have it 90% there when you first see it.
yeah.
And B-list guys, you just have to almost start from scratch. For some reason, it's, they don't do it on the first try. And I don't mind it. It's just more work for me. But we had an A-list guy on Ruthless People. His
Yeah.
name was Artie Schmidt. And there was
I,
another guy on Scary Movie 3 called John Pole.
yeah.
And there was another guy who I won't mention his name, but he was an editor who worked with us on Police Squad.
Yeah.
And we just remembered he was so good, so we requested him for, another movie. And it was a movie I did after I hadn't directed in a while. And so this guy, I went to see the first scene or the first cut,
Yeah.
and I was shocked because I said, oh, maybe I've lost it. I'm not a good director anymore. This
Yeah.
sucks. It's just terrible. And then I found out he didn't use the right takes for anything. So this particular editor had lost it. He just lost it. And, so I just struggled to do, and I never worked with him again. And another guy we had was a pretty good editor, but he got into drugs and he kind
Oh,
of spun out. Yeah.
oh. There's, I'm just curious what your post production looks like, given the amount of planning that you do, the amount of the work you do. And I found another old interview with you, for instance, and it was editing Naked Gun 2, and about where the test screening thing comes in,
Right.
and how much difference just the tiniest change can make. And I'm not going to be able to find the exact bit. Oh, here we go. There's a bit at the end of the second one where it says, in the original version, spoilers, the evil Habsburg conspiring to turn America's energy policy pro-nuclear, tumbled from a 32nd floor window only to have his fall broken by an awning, land on his feet, straighten his tie, give a smug got away with it look, and then got jumped by a lion. And the result, not a titter. And then you took half a second out of it. And it says in here, it just made the difference and brought the house down. And I'm
Yeah,
fascinated by half a
yeah,
second making that
yeah.
much dramatic difference.
That is it. That's a scary story
Yeah,
because if it's just that, yeah, and that's why we preview stuff. And the audience tells us if stuff is working or not. And the audience is always right. You can't say, well, this whole audience is stupid. We know what we're doing and everything. There was another gag in the first Naked Gun where the doctor says to Nordberg's wife, we think we can save your husband's arm. Where would you like it sent?
another one.
Funny line, but it didn't work. And we tried recutting it through two previews. And then on the third preview, just as kind of a Hail Mary pass,
Yeah.
we put the line as a voiceover over the guy's back as they were leaving. And
And
so,
that
and that got a laugh.
and that was the only change
That
between
was
it
the
getting
only
a laugh.
change. No, the line is funny.
Yeah.
The line is funny. And, other lines depend on the reaction shot,
Yeah.
but also you don't want to cut to a reaction because I like to do some reactions in a two shot. So you have both characters, and there's a scene in another scene in Naked Gun where Leslie and George are in a car, and George says the doctors are giving Norberg a 50-50 chance of
There's
living,
a there's
but there's only a
10%
10% chance of
chance of that.
that.
Yeah.
And Leslie looks at him, but it's in the same shot. We don't cut to it. So you always want to give the audience credit for seeing the joke and not always have to point stuff out to them.
So when would you say you learnt that? I mean, was that somewhere between Kentucky Fried Movie and Airplane? It kind of like, did you learn that lesson
We
quickly?
learned a lot in Kentucky Fried Movie, from what John Landis did, both
Yeah.
positive and negative. And there were a lot of things that Landis contributed that were great, and a lot of things that he did that we thought we could have done better. And that's what kind of encouraged us to think, hey, we can direct. And Landis was great to take half of our suggestions, but Jerry and Jim and I wanted all our suggestions taken. And so, before Kentucky Fried Movie, we had never been on a movie set. So
Yeah.
it was good that we did that before we did Airplane.
I found another piece in Premiere just as Jim had done Big Business. And it talked because he was the first to go it alone, wasn't he, out of the three of you? I think. Is that right? I think he
He may
was.
have been, yeah.
And it talks about, it sounds like the most trivial little thing, but the way that you were financially treated on Ruthless People, he implied was not awful, but just difficult in that Disney was said to be effectively splitting one director's salary between three people.
Yeah,
And
but that's
it's
not anything
I,
against the studio.
no,
That
of course
that
not.
was
Yeah,
yeah,
there was.
that was the deal. The three of us were used to directing together and to, making a lot of money on the back end, from residuals. And Airplane was a big hit, and we did see money from
Yeah,
it. And Top Secret was a flop, so we didn't see any money from that.
I
And we
tried.
split one director's salary. And then Ruthless People, again, we split three ways. And People, big hit, but no money.
Yeah, that's the
So
other thing that came out of that. You
yeah,
never
but
saw the
and that's
profits. That
not, we don't blame Michael Eisner or Jeff Katzenberg for that. That's the studio. And so we said after that, well, we're going to direct separately.
and that was a film school for you and a half, by the sounds of it. Ruthless People. Whenever I hear you talk about that you'd learnt an awful
Yeah.
lot, but that was like the next block of lessons.
Well, after Top Secret, we couldn't figure out what happened, and so we we were so clueless that we thought, well, maybe audiences don't want spoof anymore.
Yeah,
So that's why Katzenberg sent me the script for Ruthless People, and I read it, and I said, "Oh, this is just funny. This is just great." And written by, excellent writer Dale Launer, and so so Jim and Jerry and I decided, well, we'll do this, and we won't do a spoof. We'll do a farce, and that's what Ruthless People was, where the actors, you don't need Jim Carrey for it, but you do get comic personalities like Bet, Danny,
yeah.
and Judge Reinhold, comic actors, and Helen Slater. So, and that just worked great, and it was a hit, but we didn't really see any money out of it.
Bette Midler's box office run in the 1980s was as good as Eddie Murphy's, but she never got the headlines for that. The stuff that she was doing there, and I watched Ruthless People again at the weekend, was extraordinary. A huge fan of her, though. Also, the little bit I just want to I know this came up on a Reddit thing you did over the weekend, but the little suggestion from Judge Reinhold
Yeah,
had in
yeah.
Ruthless People, because you've been fairly open about you don't improvise on your sets, you work the script, but you'll listen to an actor. And I just wonder if you could just tell that little Judge Reinhold story.
Well, there was a scene in Ruthless People where Judge Reinhold is saying, "I'm going to be ruthless. I'm just going to and from now on, I'm going to be ruthless." And as he's doing that speech to Helen Slater, he picks up some kind of cockroach or bug from the floor on a piece of paper and puts it out on the porch, and then closes the door. And that was going to be the end of the scene. And Judge suggested to me, why don't I open the door again and then stomp on it? And of course, I immediately said, no, no, that won't be funny. I just maybe I didn't want to take a suggestion from an actor, or maybe, my first reaction is always no. But if I have a chance to think about it, and then I thought about it, and I said, well, what if it works? And what'll it cost us? 7 more minutes of doing another take. And so we did it, and Judge was completely right. That thing got a big laugh, and that's why it's in the movie. But we don't allow any improvisation. We
Yeah.
just the scariest actor I ever had to face was Robert Goulet, and on Naked Gun 2.5. So we get the rehearsal just before shooting, and I'm looking at my script. Well, I don't recognize any of the lines, and I said, Bob, you said this. The script says you got to say this is, and he says, I know. I kind of paraphrase things. I said, no, 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 no. That you can't do. You have to say exact, because when we write, the comedy has more or less of a rhythm.
Yeah.
And like I said, I limit the speeches to 6 lines. And so that's why it's so good to have a computer rather than typing on a typewriter. But Woody Allen still types his scripts on a typewriter.
There's who's the guy I had him on my podcast who still writes them on a really old word processing program that just
Oh,
I know a few writers who do that, just like
oh,
really old machines that
but
just wouldn't work. Yeah.
Final Draft is good.
Yeah.
My son Charles says there's something even better than that now, because
Yeah.
he's writing some things. So But I love Final Draft because I can, I also want to keep the script to 108 pages. You can't go
Yeah,
over that. If you're going over that, there's something wrong.
yeah.
You said too much, and I go over every slug line, every description, and cut out words. See if I can be as brief as possible. And
Fade,
so, and you can do that because of these screenwriting programs.
fade in is much cheaper than Final Draft. For those just breaking in, anyone listening to that does pretty much the same thing as well. I know loads of people are using that at the moment. Can I just ask quickly, actually, you brought up just in terms of writing, I did read on the original Naked Gun that four of you wrote that.
Yes,
It was
four of us wrote it.
but you each wrote a draft separately first. Is that true?
Well, not a whole, no. Jerry wrote 30 pages, Pat Proft wrote 30, Jim 30, and I wrote 30. And we said, you'll take the first half of the first act or something like that. You'll take this section and you'll take the baseball game. And now I can't remember who took what. However, on the set, as the movie went into pre-production and shooting, I wrote the next 20 drafts.
Yeah. But
I never stopped writing. I just kept writing, and that's what I pretty much done is, the night before, rewriting stuff or on the set. You have to be able to think on your feet. Why doesn't this work? There was this book written called The Right Stuff, and it was made into a movie, and the fighter pilot or the
the
test
Chuck
pilot,
Yeager film.
Chuck
Oh, it's
Yeager,
an amazing
and
film.
and
Yeah. Philip
Chuck
Kaufman.
Yeager was recounting how if the plane was going in before he crashed, he had to go through a checklist. He says you try A, you try B, you try C, and then only at the last minute do you punch out.
Yeah.
And so that's what I feel about directing. I mean, without the impending loss of life. But
No, don't do that. Don't do
no.
that. I mean, so to round things off, you are presenting a director's cut of Airplane
Okay,
at the
now
moment.
I'm going on this on
You're
this
going on
tour
tour.
of American cities. Right now, it's in the West. It's from Seattle, Denver, Houston, Dallas. A lot of cities. And Jerry and Jim and I did spend some time doing a director's cut of Airplane, but it's not what you think. It's because we're so fixated on the movie keeping the pace
Yeah.
that we cut things out. So it's a lot of things are trimmed, and some scenes we actually cut out just to make the thing go faster and not to do so many callbacks. So the movie, our director's cut of Airplane is actually 3 minutes shorter, but they're they're promoting this as this is the director's cut. People think they're going to, oh, Jesus, we're going to see, 20 minutes of great material. But, in comedies, in movie comedy, there is no such thing as additional materials that are any good, because if it's funny in a comedy, they keep it in. If it's not funny, they cut it out. So, when you see on a DVD with 10 minutes of additional material, but what I'm showing some things that nobody's ever seen before, which is some of the jokes in Airplane that we did on stage in our 1970s Kentucky Fried Theater show. And that's really
Really?
cool. Yeah.
There is precedent for director's cuts being shorter. I think Spielberg did a recut of Close Encounters that made it shorter.
That's shorter. Okay. So
yeah, so
I
there's
don't
one
feel
or
like
two. There's one or two, but I'm just fascinated because you're doing a Q&A afterwards with Robert Hayes, I think.
with Robert Hayes, and we love doing this together.
So the first 20 minutes is surely angry people in the crowd saying, "Where's that bit gone from the film?"
Which is great. I'll say,
question?
well, the explanation is, we had to get you in here in pain. So, and then now we can explain our way out of this. But I think we will show we'll show some other things from the movie, like some mistakes in the movie. Like, the Robert Hayes had a stuntman who was supposed to do a backflip
Yeah.
and then go into the crowd, and then Hayes goes out, and you can actually see Hayes crouching in the background, ready to come out while the stuntman goes in. And there's another scene where he's chasing Julie Haggerty through the airport, and you can see a grip laying cable in the corner.
So your idea of a director's cut screening is to make the film shorter and then to rip the shit out of your own film by pointing out the mistakes.
Right. Yeah. And then, but I want to show some of these things. You know, we have some great footage.
I love it. And so when are you doing the Top Secret tour? Let's start. Let's end where we started. When are you bringing Top Secret back here?
Here's an idea that I have. Instead of showing Airplane, making people sit through Airplane again.
You're going to show them a completely different film.
Well, I could show the best of from, you know, there would be scenes from American Carol. There'd be scenes from Top Secret, Basketball, Naked Guns. And there's some greats. I could just narrate that and, you know, and then have questions in between. And it could be almost like a one-man show. I think, I don't know if you think people would show up for that?
I think you're selling out Airplane screenings by the sounds of it. And I think if you put on Top Secret, I'm there.
Okay.
I think I've been fairly clear on this point that on top.
Yeah.
I mean, they put the box set out. They've remastered it in 4K. Do you get involvement in any of this that Paramount?
Yeah, we do. But,
yeah,
you know, we have to split the residuals with Airplane 2. You know, they do that so that they...
Airplane 2 is not in there. No, that's the Zaz collection. That's Naked Gun,
it's the Zaz collection.
In Airplane.
Yeah, we get... I think we get some pennies from
I've got a poster in here. I didn't know that.
I
didn't know that in the box all this time. Look at that.
Oh, look at that. You have that.
Look at that. That would have been on the wall in the background instead of Kermit the Frog, had I known.
That's right. Yeah.
I've learned a very valuable lesson there, David Zucker. I wish we're out of time, and I'm very conscious you've been very generous with your time. I thank you enormously for it. The MasterCrash course and the Stuntless feature and the Airplane tour. I'll put all the links out on socials and in description of this. I wish you the very best and take care. Thank you so much for your time.
Bye-bye.